Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. We're here with some more Incan, Spanish conquest of the Incan Empire. Before, we pretty much had the height of the Incan Empire at its highest, and pretty much gave the reasons for its downfall. Basically, when one passes away, like if you're a leader or something, you kind of take your wealth with you. And you're not like handing it down to the next in line to kind of help them, along, with the transition. So, with that being said, yeah, that's they say it was kind of like part of the demise of the Incan Empire. And I guess Spanish conquest, basically, I guess Spain came over here and, this is, there's something to gain from over here. And I guess they go to war here. It's kind of cool that one of the cool things about the empire is that they had like food and other things kind of stored like all over the country in these boxes because they didn't have like the resources, like didn't have like the big animals to kind of transport it, long distances, and so they kind of had to do that, which is really interesting and cool. And I'm actually interested to see if this comes into effect in the Spanish conquest of the Incan Empire, like if this actually ends up being like very helpful, or really does not, because Spain has horses, and I'm expecting them to bring horses over, to be a part of trade and all that stuff, but I'm not quite sure. I mean, I guess not off the bat, if there's the Spanish conquest of the Incan Empire, but I don't know. We're gonna jump into this, guys. Before we do, please hit that like and subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate it. And yeah, let's jump into it. Spanish conquest. Bam. Don't do it.
Get rid. 500 years ago, atop the snow-capped Andes, in a still barely mapped continent, thousands of meters above sea level, two new empires smashed into each other in a historical collision that reverberates into the modern day. Conquistador and Sapper Inca, men from different worlds, will clash. The Arquebus and Huayraca will meet.
So Spain was a new empire on its own at this time, I'm guessing. Maybe someone will let me know in the comments. I guess it is so a long time ago. I guess Spain was just kind of getting its feet on the pedal as far as being an empire, right? I'm not sure.
From different worlds will clash. The Arquebus and Huayraca will meet, and Tawantinsuyu, the land of four part together, will be undone. In 1528, Hernán Cortés had just returned from Mexico, bringing tales of conquest along with unimaginable treasures. The Holy Roman Emperor and King of Spain, Charles V, received him and his riches in Toledo. As Cortés impressed the royal court, another veteran of the New World arrived at the city. It was Francisco Pizarro, the second cousin of Cortés. Pizarro had arranged to meet the king and planned to impress him with gifts: gold, silver, feathers, natives, and bizarre creatures unknown outside of the Andes. Pizarro told his king of the magical land of Peru, home to a native empire that Pizarro assured him could be conquered in his name. On the 26th of July 1529, Pizarro was issued a royal license to conquer this new land and named the governor of Peru.
Wow.
Armed with a royal permission, Pizarro set off recruiting potential conquistadors. He returned to his hometown of Trujillo, gathered his four brothers, Juan, Francisco, Gonzalo, and Hernando, and then set sail for the Americas in January 1530. The Sapper Inca, Huayna Capac, had recently subdued much of what is now Ecuador, when reports began trickling in. Strange men had traded with the city of Tumbes. Alongside these reports came others that were much more horrific. Chasqui's runners arrived daily, informing the Sapper Inca that a disease had appeared in the north and was killing thousands. Nothing like it had ever been seen before. Plagues were unknown to the Inca, so this strange sickness, known to us as smallpox, ravaged the population.
they don't know anything about that. I'm guessing they got, obviously maybe the Spanish, Europeans brought it over because, you introduce something new to, a new culture or whatnot, and they're not accustomed to it, not used to it. It ends up, flourishing. So I'm guessing that was the thing, going on.
The Eurasian disease was not brought by Pizarro, however, as it arrived slightly before he did, creeping in from North and Central America.
Okay, in your mind, it wasn't the Spain or the Europeans, okay? I'm glad they answered that.
Before he did, creeping in from North and Central America. In the following years, up to 90% of the empire would succumb to the disease.
Wow.
Sometime around 1527, the Sapa Inca Huayna Capac and his heir died from smallpox along.
Well, if he's just coming to conquest the Incan Empire, this is definitely a good best time to do it, if any, when most of their population is dead and trying to recover, as long as, I guess, Spain doesn't really catch it themselves. So, wow, timing on this is crazy.
Alongside millions of their subjects. 2 years before Pizarro had petitioned the King of Spain, Eurasian germs had initiated the conquest for him. With the succession now unclear and the realm divided, the sons of Huayna Capac both tried to claim the throne and tossed the empire into chaos. Atahualpa.
I'm guessing, like, in Incan Empire, it's not as clear who takes over, because I know, like, it's like the oldest son, in Europe, usually, when a king dies, oldest son is the heir. I'm assuming it would be the same here, or just maybe the other son. I get maybe they don't have, like, all the information to really give us the details of this, but I would think it would be the same thing.
Who possessed much less territory than Huáscar, controlled his dead father's veteran legions and slowly pushed down from Quito towards Cusco. During the final bloody climax of the war in 1532, Huáscar's remaining armies were smashed outside of Cusco and he was captured by Atahualpa's generals. Atahualpa was camped over 900 kilometers away in the town of Cajamarca with a small portion of his army awaiting news of the battle. Even with the Incas' exceptional highways and their tireless chess-keys, it would take 5 days for word of the victory to reach Atahualpa. There, in Cajamarca, Atahualpa planned his eventual coronation as the supreme ruler of the Inca world.
Okay.
He was eager to get word from his generals and set off on his victory march towards his new capital. But there was just one small detail that he needed to deal with at the moment.
Okay.
Reports were coming in from his chiefs that a small band of 168 foreigners, some of whom were riding giant llamas, was causing havoc on the coast, and it appeared they were
giant llamas. That had to be pretty, like, back then, no matter, I guess, where you lived. When a foreign animal, just like the elephants back in, like, the Roman times, arrived, like, to see these different beasts, things bigger than you've seen. Obviously a horse is much bigger than a llama. To see these come and for people to be riding them, like, that had to be pretty intimidating, even, so it also had to be extremely interesting and, like, the questions, crazy times, right?
Were now marching straight for Cajamarca. Atahualpa was curious, and rather than have these men killed, he decided to see them and their strange llamas himself. What could 168 do against his 50,000 soldiers?
True.
He had agreed to meet the Spaniards in the central plaza of Cajamarca. This was a ceremonial meeting between his vast empire and some lowly visitors. So, on Saturday, November 16th, 1532, Atahualpa entered the square at Cajamarca, followed by 6,000 of his barely armed men. A battle was not expected. Atahualpa was quite confident, as just the day before he had heard of his victory at Cusco and the capture of his rival brother Huáscar. So this was a day of celebration. Once he had had his meeting with this odd band of foreigners, he could march south and have his glorious coronation.
Okay.
Pizarro and his men had planned to emulate Cortez. They would capture...
I'm gonna say, like, ominous music and, like, the way he's wording it's like ambush kind of.
Pizarro and his men had planned to emulate Cortez. They would capture Atahualpa, thus cutting off the head of the Inca Empire and paralyzing it. Atahualpa, as Sapa Inca, was supreme ruler of the empire, and it could not function without him. Pizarro had hidden his men in the buildings surrounding the square, and stationed the artillery and arquebuses on the far side of the square, ready to fire. Like too many fans in a tiny football stadium, the Inca troops crowded into the square, which had only 2 narrow exits.
Does your deodorant keep you fresh all day?
Wow.
We put Dove Men deodorant to the test with Nelson, a volunteer that puts care into everything he does.
It really protects my skin. It's comfortable and lasts a long time.
Dove
Sorry.
Men, 48-hour freshness with triple action moisturizers.
Not a single Spaniard could be seen. As the sun...
That's kind of crazy. Like, obviously we don't know exactly what happens yet, but it seems like pretty clear what's about to happen. But wow, seems like a massacre. Like, this was just planned out. You know, I don't even know what's happening yet, but it's pretty obvious, right?
began to set, nothing could be heard in the square except for a slight breeze. The fear inside the stone buildings was incalculable. Pedro Pizarro said, "I heard that many Spaniards urinated on themselves without noticing it from sheer terror." Eventually, 2 men appeared from the buildings and approached Atahualpa. Vicente de Valverde, a Dominican friar, and an inexperienced native translator. The friar read the following to Atahualpa. "I request and require you to recognize the Church as your mistress and as governess of the world and universe. And if you do not do this, with the help of God we shall come mightily against you, and we shall make war on you everywhere and in every way that we can, and we shall subject you to the yoke and obedience of the Church and His Majesty, and we shall seize your women and children, and we shall make them slaves to sell and dispose of as His Majesty commands. And we shall do all the evil and damage to you that we are able. And I must insist that the deaths and destruction that result from this will be all your fault." This was the Requerimiento, a document read aloud to the native peoples of the New World, informing...
I was gonna say, like, isn't like this like word of mouth is a thing that, like, how do they still know this? You know, but of course this is you know, Spain, so obviously they actually kept some records, and you know they had, you know, writing and everything. So, okay, but wow, man. It's pretty ballsy right there, man. Like, the Inca, man, they're probably just like, what? Like, we got you way outnumbered. What's this guy talking about? He must be crazy. Like,
a document read aloud to the native peoples of the New World, informing them of Spain's divine right to conquer these lands in the name of God. Valverde then approached Atahualpa and offered him a Bible. Atahualpa had heard reports of the men's fascination with these objects, but he had no way to contextualize what this was or how to interact with it. He had had enough with these foreigners now, and their disrespect for the Inca diplomatic customs. Atahualpa scolded Valverde and the Spanish for stealing from warehouses and killing Inca chiefs, and proceeded to toss the book aside. Valverde, horrified at this perceived act of extreme blasphemy, sprinted towards the stone buildings, shouting, Come out, Christians! Come at these enemy dogs who reject the things of God!" The square again fell silent. With loud roars, the cannons and arquebuses soon fired directly into the mass of warriors, spewing out smoke and metal shrapnel. Inca soldiers, shocked by the sounds, soon saw beasts riding towards them. The Spanish war...
Did they have cannons? Did the Inca and have cannons? Did they? Like, talk about, like, being scared crap, like, all of a sudden these, like, things fire off, and you're just... people around you just dying in this smoke, and they're probably trying to escape, where they probably can't see nothing because all the smoke's in the way. And then these giant beasts with people on them, or over, like, towering over top of you. I mean, that had to be terrifying. And then apparently they weren't armed very well, so wow. Like, if they were all probably in shock, as they were probably going to end up getting slaughtered here.
Cry, Santiago, was screamed as men rushed out of the buildings. A massacre ensued as the panic-stricken Inca force tried to retreat out of the tiny square. Dazed masses of soldiers ran for the narrow exits. It was impossible to escape. Thousands died, trampled under their comrades or horses. Chopping through the men holding the royal litter, Pizarro and his men grabbed Atahualpa and dragged him back into one of the stone buildings. Just that morning, he was basking in a victory that took 4 years to complete. Atahualpa was now, at sunset, prisoner to an unknown group of people. The Inca Empire, which only just finished a destructive civil war, was now involved in the highest stakes hostage situation of all time. The survivors of the massacre ran from the square, and the rest of the Inca army, now leaderless, dispersed into the countryside. Atahualpa noted the excitement the Spaniards had at finding gold trinkets amongst the wreckage. He concluded that these were pirates from some faraway land. If he could give them enough gold, then they would return to their ships and be gone. He told Pizarro that in exchange for his life and freedom, he would fill the room they were in with gold and twice over with silver. Atahualpa delivered on his promise. For months, the greatest treasures and artifacts of the Inca Empire poured into Cajamarca. The room was filled, and everything was melted down into ingots, which is why gold or silver Inca artifacts are so rare today. In the end, the gold totaled 1.3 million pesos de oro, or around 400 million 2018 US dollars, to be divided between the 168 men and the King of Spain. As the ransom poured in, so did more Spanish troops. Diego de Almagro, Pizarro's business partner, arrived with an extra 153 men. The fact that more Spaniards had arrived made it clear that 53 men. The fact that more Spaniards had arrived made it clear that this...
Oops. But wow, that is a lot of money to split between that many people. And he just, I guess he was desperate, to get let free. And basically, it seems like he just gave away like his entire country's wealth. I mean, maybe he has a whole lot more, but wow. Woo. That's a lot of money, man. Like, the Spanish are definitely probably coming back. Like, wow, he just gave away us all this money. There's got to be more, right?
Was an invasion force. These men were here to stay. After the Inca fulfilled their promise, it became obvious to Pizarro and his men that Atahualpa had outlived his usefulness and was now only a liability. If he were rescued, they would not be able to defeat the resistance he would organize. On July 26, 1533, Atahualpa was brought into the main square of Cajamarca and was tied to a wooden stake. The native population gathered around in awe at what was happening. Atahualpa was not only the supreme ruler of the empire, but also their god. Watching this happen must have shaken the entire worldview of the local people. Valverde, the same friar that offered him a Bible a month before, came to him and offered a baptism. If Atahualpa rejected this offer, he would be burned alive. No fate could be worse for him. If his body were not perfectly preserved like the previous emperors, then he would not pass on correctly to the afterlife. He accepted and was quickly baptized. Still, he was then strangled to death as a Christian. The conquistadors soon left Cajamarca and began the long trek to Cuzco. As the square and that lonely stake in its center faded into the distance, Pizarro and his men must have felt confident that this wealthy empire was already in their hands. But the conquest of the Inca was far from over. Thank you for watching this video in our series on the pre-Columbian civilization.
Wow. Man, imagine watching like your king die, and he's basically your god, and then he basically denounces, his faith for another like foreigner's faith. Like that had to be disheartening, and then just watching him dying with nothing they can do. I mean, talk about a kick in the groin right there for the Incan people. But then again, and then on the other side, you have the Spanish. Like, yeah, this was easy. We got all this money. We just killed their leader. They're pretty lost now. Like, yeah, like this is no problem. And these people, we can take them easily. So, excuse me. Wow, what a turn of events there. Like, just went through a civil war, had his big victory, and then all of a sudden he's giving away his money and being hung or strangled or whatever. And dang, but apparently, well, Inca's not giving up quickly because what's next here? The Great Incan Rebellion. So I guess the Inca's gonna fight back. I guess Spanish is gonna take over, but then the Inca's gonna get a force together. I'm assuming. So I'm not sure, but anyways, wow, what a crazy episode, man. That was definitely interesting, and then like that big slaughter in the middle, like knew from the get go with the way they were talking and the music, like that's exactly what was going to happen. And yeah, the slaughter. I mean, they were extremely outnumbered, but the element of surprise. They had they had the better weapons. They had the better equipment. They had the horses. I mean, they had all out. Were just had the advantage, except for men. But there you have it, guys. Please hit that like and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts about this video below. I thought that was kind of cool that we actually got to see like a setup of what happened, and like it's actually like the kings and generals, stuff that I do usually have like army versus army and the tactics and stuff. This wasn't quite like that, but it was. We got to see like that whole like square thing and how it took place. So that was kind of cool to see. So I mean, definitely interested to see what happens next. And yeah, like, subscribe, all the fun stuff. You guys have a great day, great night, and I'm out of here. Peace.